Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending the Finance Subcommittee of the Lowell School Committee. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairperson Gignac?
Here.
Ms. Doherty? Mr. Gendron?
Here.
2 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. The purpose of this subcommittee meeting is to review the FY17 budget, superintendent's recommended budget. I'd like to turn it over to the superintendent, Mr. Frisch, to go over the answers to the questions from the original budget hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we talked last, as you know, a budget is a fluid process between the first time you present it until it finally is approved by school committee, and even then, as you know, throughout the activity of 1 year, we will end up into situations where we come to you with motions to do transfers and things like that. So at this point, we have had several discussions with all of our colleagues and several parties and partners, and several things have been changed. And I'm going to ask the the CFO, our school business administrator, to present those changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. The budget process is not prepared by any one person. It's a combination of input from across the district. The budget person, myself, the chief financial officer, my job is really like a quarterback, where I'm the leader of the budget, working with various, everyone, the whole team. And so if you think about that, it's a collection of ideas. And I'm really proud that this budget process, that we've been inclusive and listened to a wide swath, however you say that word, of people throughout the organization. And I really feel strong that this is a really good budget that meets the needs of the entire school district. As the superintendent said, this is a very dynamic and fluid process, and information keeps changing as needs are uncovered. More information comes forth. So the budget is only as good as the information you have at that certain date. And so throughout the year, there will be some changes and some new costs that come through us. But this is our best guess at what the upcoming school year will look like at this point in time. So without further ado, I think I'd like to start at the top. And we passed out the table of contents, which is a packet at your table. And let's just go through each and every question that was asked. And I have a full team here. I have receivers, I have running backs, and I'm going to call upon my stars to answer these questions. So my first person that I'm going to call upon, yes. Okay, we'll share. The first question is about the out-of-district budget report. The question was, we think the school committee thought the costs were going to be higher than what was presented in the budget. And so I worked with Jen McChrystal and Janine Durkin in tabulating, trying to answer the question of what we really think the true next year cost will be. And I think we came out to the same result, but we have a better explanation of how we got there. So I'm going to ask Janine to lead us off and describe from her report, how we arrived at the bottom line. And then I have a chart that accompanies that report, and I'll go through the chart. So she'll do the words, I'll do the numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. Actually, I'm going to call upon Director of Special Education, Jen McChrystal, to share with you the outline of the report, and I want to really thank her for preparing this in advance of the meeting. Thanks.
the local budget, and then the rest of the money was from circuit breaker. As I had mentioned at the last meeting, at this point, we are about $8.6 million, so a little under that projected 9.9. Now, we're still looking at out-of-district costs, and it's very variable, and it will continue to vary until the last day of school. We are still getting students moving into the district that require out-of-district placements. DCF is asking us to pick up half of residential costs. We have a lot of moving parts, so it's our best estimate at this point. And what we did was take all of the students that are currently out of district and look at the cost increases. So for example, we have students at our local collaborative, and right now we pay approximately $60,000 for some of their tuition. We already know from that school that the tuition is going to be going up to about $83,000 next year. So we needed to factor in that cost increase. And then for the ones we don't know yet, we factored in a 5% increase. We also budgeted for some of the students that we know right now. We're in the process of working very closely with our attorneys because the families are requesting residential placements or more restrictive placements, and we need a placeholder for that. But we're hoping that through the process of hearings and mediations, always keeping in mind what's best for students, we may not be paying that, but we need to look at that. The other thing we took into consideration was what I had mentioned last time, which was looking at the recertification of the Laura Lee and LeBlanc, that are our two public day schools, that we would open up some more slots in those schools so that we wouldn't be paying schools to service our students, that we'd be able to service them within our district for no additional out-of-district costs. So that's how we arrived at the number that you have before you. And I know last time you had also asked me what was the $4.7 million that was on that sheet. That was the bills paid to date. It's actually at $5.7 million now. It's the actual checks that have been cut. So that's how we got where we got. The one thing that's still a bit of a wild card that we are constantly keeping an eye on goes back to the day school that we've been talking about and how to make additional space in our district for our students with autism. So we know that our percentage of students special ed students has remained the same, but of our students, we have 13% of them that are autistic. The school committee has been very generous in allowing us to add classes where that was possible. But what we're running into is a numbers and a logistics problem, that we have 11 preschool CSA classes that fed into 5 kindergarten first grade classes. And so there was no actual space. So we did a little bit of shifting this year without adding classes and made some pre-KK classes to try to accommodate. But what we know is going to happen next year is we don't have enough slots for students, and so those are students that typically we would service in district and not be looking at placing them out of district, but because we don't have spots for them, we may have to consider them going out of district because there aren't any physical seats for them at this point. Which is our variation.
Okay, thank you. I just had a question before I open up to the rest of the subcommittee.
Yep.
Just last week, you had brought forward a budget of $9.9 million requested at level funded, and now a week later, we're at $1.5 million more. I'm just curious as to, you know?
Yeah, I can explain that.
Okay.
So let's turn to page 3 of the handout. If we look at there's 4 columns here. The column to the right is 2016-17 budget. If you look down to the local budget portion, our local budget portion is $7.6 million. And that's exactly what we had on the first presentation. We had it netted out after subtracting the circuit breaker annual reimbursement. But and I had netted out the contracted services against what we were going to use. We were going to use revolving account funds. So now, to better answer your question, I will show you the gross and each of the deductions so that we can get to the net. So Jen had produced a spreadsheet, her staff did, for each and every student that we're expecting to place out of district for next year, 2016-17. That tabulated $11,533,797. That included a 5% increase. We're anticipating a circuit breaker annual reimbursement of $2.3 million. And we're expected to use from our circuit breaker revolving account another $1.6 million. So after subtracting those 2 items, we will get to our local budget contribution of $7.6 million. So that's the same number we had in the original budget, but this explanation is easier to track.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, in the original budget document, you simply recorded it differently?
Yes.
Okay, that answers my question. Any questions from the subcommittee regarding this first report? Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question, and pardon
Sure.
my ignorance. Can you explain what the circuit breaker account is, and where does that come from?
The circuit breaker, and I'll ask Jen to correct me if I'm wrong. Circuit breaker provides funding. It's from the state, and they provide funding for extraordinary cost, about 4 times the cost of a regular ed student. If we're over that threshold, they pay anywhere from typically 75% to 100% in some cases. So that money is coming in quarterly. And for the past several years, it's been around $2 million and increasing by $100,000 each year.
I see.
We also have a separate revolving account that if we don't use all those dollars, we can carry over those dollars from year to year.
I see.
So we have sort of like a savings account as well as an annual stream. And we're using those two funding sources to offset some of the cost that we're expected to see.
So basically, it's the state provides additional money for extraordinarily large expenses relative to these needs.
Mr.
Exactly.
Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more explanation. I think it's important to note that the state always recommends that you hold a healthy balance, because the way the reimbursement is done, all the students we spend for today, this year, we will get reimbursement next year.
Right.
So not knowing who is going to come to our district, because of that, the state always says you need to maintain a healthy balance, because you could be hit with, say, 10 students are going to cost you a certain amount. You should have it ready, because if you're running at zero balance, you don't have anything left in your revolving account for a circuit breaker,
Right.
you could run in serious trouble.
Okay, thank you.
So can you tell us what, after this $1.6 million being taken out, can you tell us what the balance would be?
Yeah, it's on the chart. Currently, well, year-end estimate at June 30th, 2016, we're expecting about 2.6 million. We'll utilize about 1.6 million, leaving a balance at the end of June 30th, 2017, about 1 million.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues present? Ms. Martin?
If I could just ask, so we get paid quarterly on this one, so would we not be expecting another payment at the end of the year? Like, as I'm looking at these year-to-date numbers, are the year-to-date of 2015-16 has the circuit breaker coming in at 2.2, and it's the same amount projected for year-end? Would we
Right.
see another payment in there?
Not till July. We received 4 payments already.
Oh, you got them all in?
Yeah.
Okay. I would have assumed it came in the last quarter, but okay.
Yeah. No, that's the first place I looked. How many payments did we receive? So, I mean, they're about 500,000 plus, so that's a chunk of change that you need to account for. So, good question.
Great. Any further discussion on this report? Okay, we'll move on to the proposal to increase behavioral specialists. Mrs. Superintendent?
Excuse me. Again, I will pass it on to Ms. Durkin.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Also here to present is Jennifer McChrystal relative to the request for the behavior analyst positions. She has been working diligently this year with her staff with tracking all of the students' needs relative to what specifically we need statewide and what the national recommendations are for these staff members to support our students. And she's also worked very closely with our school-based leaders to ascertain what the needs are that are coming out of their buildings and to be able to support the students in district and not have to provide out-of-district support. So I'll turn it over to Jen for the report.
So we firmly believe that we have some of the best programs, and we have excellent staff that work with our students. And that students, we know from the HARE report that they do better the closer they are to home. And so our goal is to always keep kids included in the district wherever we can. And what a BCBA is, a board certified behavioral analyst, is it's a very strict program that they go through. They learn how to run behavioral programs, collect data. One of our BCBAs always tells me that you could lose weight or learn anything through this. I always say, how come I haven't lost any weight? But it doesn't speak to the work that they've done with students. And especially for students with autism, they often recommend discrete trial training and really having a strict ABA program to help shape their behaviors. The national board, if you were to run a strict ABA program, recommends a caseload of about 10 to 15 students per BCBA. And right now we have one BCBA that services 269 students. So we're a little off that recommendation, and I can't speak to how hard they work and what they put into making sure it works for students, but we are getting recommendations from doctors, from advocates, from attorneys asking for these services for our students. And because we know our class sizes, especially for students with autism, are going to be very high next year because we don't have a lot of seat availability, we really need these behavioral specialists to be in the classrooms working with students and teachers to help run these behavioral programs so that the students can continue to make progress, because it's not just about their behavior, it's also about the social and academic programs that the students are running, and it's very important they receive this amount of support so that we're not looking at putting them out of district. We've also, as Assistant Superintendent Durkin indicated, we've also worked very closely with our principals. So we were very fortunate, and the superintendent and the school committee were very generous a few years ago when we added 2 BCBAs to support students with emotional and behavioral disabilities. They've worked very hard with the classrooms and the principals for those substantially separate populations, and the principals have requested repeatedly that in order for them to have their schools remain safe and students making progress and teachers and students to be engaged in learning, that their recommendation was that each pairing, elementary school and a middle school, share one BCBA to really help them develop the programs and run the system so that the students are able to continue to make those gains. And that's the little bit of history of why we're asking for this, because we know it's very difficult in a very tight budget where we're looking at cuts to be standing in front of you asking for something. But this is really about building our own internal capacity so that we can continue to support students and ensure that they're getting what they need in order to make this progress.
Thank you. Can you tell me what the caseload is going to be for these new?
Yep, so what we actually would be doing is we divided, and I think it's in there, we divided it by school. So instead of one person in charge of all of our artistic programs, we would have one BCBA supporting 2 schools, which tend to be about 4 to 5 classrooms.
Can you tell me how
Depending,
many
and
kids?
so then if there's 10 to 12 kids in each class, it's much more manageable.
Okay, thank you. Any questions regarding this report? No? Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Next item for discussion is the bridge program update. Can you provide us with your report summary? Maybe I should just ask Ms. Durkin.
Durkin, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are two presentations that are part of this packet. Originally, when the superintendent came to me a couple of weeks back relative to looking at a substantial amount of money to cut from the budget and look at how we could do things creatively. We know that we do have 2 middle school alternative programs. And so working with the Director of Alternative Education, Margot Farrick, who is here this evening, we put together a proposal for that to happen in the current school year, knowing very well that this is going to take intensive planning for the summer months to pull together the staff, to convene with the parents and work collectively to make sure that this program was sustainable and supported all of our students. So the proposal was to merge the Bridge and the Cardinal. If you'd like to hear that specific proposal, I could have Director of Alternative Margot Farrick speak to that. Since that time, the superintendent also met this past week with Middlesex Community College, and we are proposing at this time that we investigate the feasibility of maintaining the bridge for a minimum of at least 1 year, with the school department taking over the budget and maintaining the budget. That would reflect a cost. We initially proposed that we would be hiring for the merge of the 2 schools for this current year. We would be saving approximately $450,000 in the budget with the hiring of a couple of teachers, some paraprofessionals, a security guard. Now we're looking at assimilating the current staff at the bridge, leaving them at their site for this year, and then eliminating one of those positions. This would require communication with the union and them providing us a waiver for 1 year relative to the staff salaries that are at the bridge. But that would also afford us an opportunity to really plan carefully to determine how this merge could take place for the following year. So if you'd like specifics on the merger, we can certainly talk to that as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the subcommittee, or do you have, Ms. Doherty?
Thank you. I'm much more amenable to the more tiered approach because I think it does require a lot of thought. And I guess some of my concerns are, back, what was it, last week, April 27, we had the original plan to merge with the saving. And now this week we've got a different plan. And I want to know that we've talked to the people we need to talk to. It sounds like the superintendent met with Middlesex this week. What middle school principals have been included in any of these discussions?
We actually had a meeting last week with our middle school principals relative to enrollment numbers, and we held the meeting over and offered any middle school principals to talk specifically about this merger and presented it to them. We also sent out the exact report that you received to them last Friday, so they could review it, and we asked them to provide us any feedback if they had any concerns, questions relative to it.
So essentially, if I may add, we have talked to all of them. We submitted the information to all middle school principals, who are usually the people who would work with the bridge program, and requested from them any feedback, and we waited for their feedback before we didn't really receive any changes, the suggestions from them before we sent you the information. We've also had a discussion with the current director of the bridge program, and also with the Middlesex College.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And I have another follow-up question. You mentioned in this report, under the impact on middle school alternative education enrollment, page 9, your last bullet, you're talking about as, I guess, kind of an additional side program would be this home-based school inclusion programs will be explored to help build capacity in each middle school. You mentioned here this rebound model. Could somebody explain to me what that plan is?
Yeah, if I may, I would call on Margot Ferrick.
Hi. So that was part, I deal with bifocals. That was part of the merger plan. We were really looking at if we reached capacity at the first year of 86 students, which would be where the cap would be with the merge of the two programs, what would the possibility be, and what would we look at if there was other students that needed to be referred? The plan shows that there are options. We could increase class size if programming is solid and going well, which could open up more slots for middle schools. We could look at using the engagement center as a short-term option for some middle school kids, especially the students who could be put out on 37Hs for discipline issues. And also, the Robinson Middle School has an in-house pseudo-alternative ed program called Rebound, which is where students who are sort of on the cusp, on the edge of not being overly effective in a general ed setting, but maybe not have reached the immediate level of being referred for an alternative ed placement, they go and they try to stabilize, they get assessed, they get to spend some time in this separate classroom, but be able to go back and forth to the classes where maybe they are more successful with. So that was just a representation of a model that exists in Lowell that we could think about building capacity in the general ed buildings in order to maybe prevent some alt-ed referrals and keep kids in their buildings. Because we know, statistically speaking, the more movement that a student has, the less likely they're as effective in their education and graduating.
If I could follow up with that. So my understanding is we're not really going to be losing many slots by going to this tiered approach.
Okay, so could you explain what you mean by tiered? Are you talking about the merger? There's
That
two
you're
different,
not jumping into this merger the first year. I'm looking at you're doing you're moving in that direction. That's where I came up with this idea.
okay, so the
Next year, we would have 88 slots. Is that correct?
next year, nothing, the slots wouldn't look, if we do not merge the two programs and put that first report on the side, we're going to look at just assuming the bridge under the Lowell Public Schools district budget, instead of funneling the money through Middlesex Community College and having them manage it, we're going to take it under. But there's financial ramifications for that, because one of the benefits of doing it through Middlesex Community College was that the teachers aren't in the union, so they have different rules, different salary rates, all of which I think are lower than what our Unit A salaries are. And it was able, and when it was developed, many years ago, it was about being able to be innovative and creative in a different way, kind of like why the innovations policies are coming into play and being able to create different type of in-district programs now.
Can I just, I'm not sure that, I think what you were asking specifically is, for next year, would the numbers change? We would need to assess that based on the one staff member that would be eliminated from the bridge program, but I want you to know that for the last 2 years, with the 88 students, we have not gone over that in both of our programs combined. So we feel confident that, also if we do get the additional behavioral analysts in the district, that they're going to be able to support students and help them stay in their regular settings. But we feel that even if we needed to go, we probably certainly could go higher than the 88, with the two programs being maintained separately, and then really spending some time with our staff building capacity over the course of the next year, so that we could assimilate the two programs together.
Thank you.
Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Gignac. So I'm just trying to understand, my assumption is the whole thrust behind merging these programs is cost savings.
Yep.
So what you just said, Ms. Farrick, was that, there's savings, we get savings through the bridge program. So if we merge these programs into one program under Lowell Public Schools, we'd lose that savings.
Not with the proposal that, not with the proposal that we are making for year 2. So for year 1, we're requesting the removal of one of the current staff members from the bridge program, and then also there are some indirect costs that we would not need to address in our budget. So there would be a savings, I think it was 228,769 that we would have for this first year, taking on the program with the staffing that they currently have. For the next year, what we would propose, and this is, could be changed slightly, but what we would continue to propose is what we offered in the second portion of the report to you, is hiring 3 additional classroom teachers, perhaps those staff members from the bridge, in our own program. And then either an assistant coordinator or someone with a behavior background, a security guard, and some paraprofessionals to maintain the program for a cost savings of $450,000.
Okay, so it's mainly through consolidation of administration and staff that we gain the savings. One of the concerns that was raised to me is that the programs are separate for a reason, and that there's, I understand different types of needs that are served through each program, and that combining them may eliminate that or may damage that, that care that we're able to provide, that unique care we'll be able to provide through each program. Do you think that's so? And do you think in the combination of the programs we're going to be able to address it?
If I may, I think that is why you see this more careful approach. After we talked to all the principals, we talked to the director of the bridge programs and everything, and all some other folks as well, the community college. That's why this new approach preserves the bridge as is. They're not eliminating, by the way, anything that would affect capacity. They're eliminating an administrative job. The teachers remain the same. To answer to your question earlier, they have a cap of 10 students per classroom. They have 5 classrooms. Their cap currently is set at 50. They only have 48 students as of now, so they have capacity of 2 for the number of teachers that they have now. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to have perhaps a more careful approach, if you wish. If we can maintain them the way they are, programmatically they're not changing, quality is still the same. We all know that it's a successful program. And then allow both teams, the student services team and the bridge team, to work together throughout this year, the rest of this year and next year, and work together to see if there is a way that we can reach the intended the intent of the first proposal, which is the full consolidation, so that it can hopefully, if we are able to do that, it would for next year lead to further savings.
Okay. Did you have anything to add to that, Ms. Farrick, with regard to programmatically being able to provide the same unique types of care that each of the programs are providing now?
I agree with the superintendent that if we have a thoughtful process that we can. I think over the past few years, we've really seen that the populations have much more blended between the two programs. We actually have a lot of students that go back and forth between the Bridge and the Cardinal. And building the capacity at the Cardinal where you can run 6 strands or 7 or 8 strands of cohorts, different cohorts of students, means we could really schedule very thoughtfully about where the kids are versus what their needs are. And with the increased staff, I think it could be an amazing program. But
Okay. All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any further questions on the bridge program proposals? Ms. Martin?
I just had a quick question on the calculations on the full-time fringe and health.
Sure.
I see some notes on here, I'm just trying to figure out what that means. The 8 positions were already accounted for in the original budget, and this is just showing the 2
Right.
additional?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that question. In the budget, we charge $10,000 per employee for health benefits, or budget that. We had in the original proposal 8 employees. Those 8 employees are taken out. We've included the 10 employees that replicate their program, that are currently servicing the bridge.
Okay.
So 10 minus 8 is 2. So the 2 times 10,000 is 20,000. So that's how we got to the $20,000 number.
So the other positions are actually, their health insurance is accounted for in the budget some other place than this sheet here?
Correct. I can show you that on the budget template.
And so we're looking at 10, or are we looking at, because I'm looking at 12 positions here, and then we're eliminating 1.
Yeah, so there's 11, but one of those positions is part-time, art/music.
Okay.
So that's not, we didn't charge benefits for that. 'Cause it's half-time.
Okay. Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions on the bridge program? Great, thank you very much. Moving on, the superintendent can provide a report on the impact of class size at Lowell High School.
Sure.
Go ahead. I'll let Mr. Frisch answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. The school committee asked what was the impact with on the students by taking out 4 teaching positions. Since that, we've had a lot of discussions with the high school, looking more carefully at the world language program. We offer a number of world language at the high school, and so just looking at the averages is sort of misleading because some of the French classes are at 27. And so we're running some lower class sizes in offering Latin, for an example. So it made more sense to put back in the world language teacher. So we're recommending, instead of taking out 4 positions, actually just taking out 2 positions, and those 2 positions are retirees. But I have data here that talks about the class size for the math, English, and science, so let's look at those numbers. Looking at the math department, freshman academy, we're looking at, there's 3 columns, and this is by teacher, so I didn't put the teacher's name, I just put teacher 1, teacher 2, teacher 3, and so on. The first column to the left is the number of periods. It says 10, for instance, the first line on page 12, teacher 1, they're teaching 5 periods in semester 1, 5 periods semester 2. Enrollment is 219, that's for the full year. So that teacher, on average, her class size or his class size is 21.9, and that's simply taking the enrollment of 219 and dividing that into the number of periods.
Before you go on, these figures are for next school year?
The course requests are not in the system, so we're using the current information. And when we looked at, okay, is the enrollment for next year what's it going to look like? We looked at the incoming freshman class, and that happens to be smaller than the outgoing senior class. So when we looked at the total enrollment on a cohort basis, we're looking at it relatively flat.
For the entire school, but for the freshmen, you don't know. Correct.
Well, it's the freshman it's a smaller class.
Coming in. Okay.
And this information was downloaded by our school accountability office, and information taken directly from our software package called X2. So moving right along, on average, when you total all the teachers for the freshman academy, for the math department, on average, you're looking at 19.5 class size. Now that's an average, so there could be, some classes could be higher, some classes could be lower. Now looking at the math department main campus, again, the average for all 22 teachers, and not replacing the retired teacher, we're looking at a class size of 22.1. The English department, just moving right on to the next department, again, the freshman academy, you're looking at a class size on average of 19.47, and for the main campus, 24.2. The science department, pretty similar, except for the freshman academy, 23 is their class size, and a 24 for the main campus. So, out of the 4 teaching positions, the world language was their top priority to bring back. When we talked with headmaster Mr. Martin, and the next priority was English teacher. So in our budget with the changes, we're putting back 2 of those 4 positions, and that represents 110,000, 55,000 times 2.
Okay, thank you. Just for the next budget hearing, if you could include what the impact is going to be regarding the other positions that are being eliminated from the high school or proposed, such as the social worker and the freshman academies of support specialists.
Sure.
Thank you. Any, Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So do we have kind of a target for class size at the high school? You know, as I look at these, and I know, and I take out the specialty areas, I look at you. Because I know that for those to work, we need to sometimes, you know, maintain smaller class sizes. But for our larger, you know, English language arts and all those, do we have a target that we look at as kind of that perfect goal number for a classroom
I'll
size?
defer to our curriculum team members.
Or Mr. Martin is also.
Or Mr. Martin, so one of the two can address
I
that.
mean, I know in a perfect world, it'd be like 5, but, I mean, do we have kind of a target number?
Mr. Chairman, the 26, 28 is what we look for. Yeah.
And does that compare, now that they dragged you up there, I'm sorry, does that compare with middle school and elementary numbers? So could you compare those for me? So if you're at 26, 27, what would be at the middle school?
I mean, currently at the middle school, we're running high.
Right.
We're running pretty high, and I think we would, if you would ask, we didn't ask in any formal way, we didn't do any formal assessment of that, but asking last time all the principals of middle school, they'd love to see the 25 and 26. Because right now, in some grades, they're running much higher than that.
Right.
And we have the report on the fifth graders that you asked for, so we'll visit that data coming up.
My only question would be, and this is something we could certainly talk about when we get into the actual budget hearing, is that, you know, historically, at the higher level grades, it is easier to accommodate larger numbers, that the biggest impact for small classroom sizes starts at that elementary level, and as children developmentally move up, they can be just as successful in slightly larger class sizes. I mean, 26, 27 seems reasonable. Looking at these, there are a lot that fall below that. So that would be the question as we look at this, how to kind of make sure that we're in that 26 to 27 range, because I think that's a reasonable place for a high school classroom to be. But when we look at some of the 19s and 17s, perhaps there could be an opportunity there. Again, just in those big subject areas,
Mr.
not in
Headmaster.
specialty areas.
What we tried to do is actually look at the level for each of the core subjects, so that when you have AP or honors or college, traditionally the numbers have been lower in the AP and honors than the college level. And what we've done in the last 3 years is we've changed that, because your lower level students were a lot of repeat ninth graders, a lot of students that had failed subjects, and those were the students that were more at risk to dropping out. So what we did is we lowered the numbers in those college level classes so that there would be a better teacher to student ratio, and the other numbers are higher. And we found that it's worked. It's helped with our dropout rate and all that. So the numbers the high school is very different when you do averages because of the different levels that we have. And but I think in general we're satisfied we can meet the needs of our students with the budget that we're proposing, and worked with the quarterback, Mr. Frisch, and I think we're on the right track. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Martin, you're saying that 26 to 28 is kind of a maximum that you look to, because if you look at the average numbers, the highest is 24 in average in English. Is that fair?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And again, we're building the schedule as it goes. I mean, you don't always know. What we're trying to do to stay in real time is communicate with the guidance counselors in the middle schools on a daily basis, with David Robinson, the student support in the vocational schools, so that when students accept that they're going to go there, they come off our list, and vice versa, so that we know almost on a daily basis what that ninth grade number is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. We'll move on to CBO host sites budget. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you. I think you know the answer to that because you provided some of it. Yes, these are the funds that we get from the CBOs, the community-based organizations. And I think when they were appearing on the, in the budget, they looked like it was a cost, but it really isn't a cost. The revenue comes from these CBOs, these community-based organizations, and there was an agreement that where the programs are hosted, the schools will get some funding to help them with their supplies. So these are just kind of a pass-through back to the schools, and they add up to 66,200. I want to have Mr. Frisch also comment on what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I think the question was posed by Mr. Dakota, and that was, what is CBO? And I think, Bob, you answered the question. CBO is community-based organizations. So what we do receive are rental income that goes into our revolving account for the, so that's coming in. And then what was budgeted are, as Mr. Superintendent talked about, that we provide additional supply allocations for the schools that host the CBOs. And so what you see here is the total allocation for 2015-16, totaling $66,200, and that covers 7 schools. The YMCA receives, the rental income is much lower that we receive from the YMCA, and the CTI, Community Teamwork Incorporated, provides approximately $70,000, and so that's sort of a pass-through. We do incur overtime cost for operating or staffing these programs in terms of custodial overtime.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Dakota, you have any questions? Okay, great.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to 5th grade projected enrollment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following that question, I asked staff to put together the numbers of what would these 5th grade enrollment look like, given the assumptions of adding 2 classrooms in the Wang and also creating 2 classrooms in the Rogers, the STEM school. If you just to recall that the STEM school has a plan to increase every year. This year, the plan was to increase to 4 strands of fourth grade. It was never a question initially to add the 2 5th grade, so we were looking at adding the 2 5th. So I asked the staff to take these back, look at where the kids are coming from, where they're going, and give us a rundown on the numbers. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Durkin or John Dakota, who's also here to help. Thank you.
Sure, I can introduce it, and then if Mr. Dakota has anything additional to share, I can ask him to come up, or if you have any specific questions relative to the numbers. So what you have in the report, I don't need to reiterate what the superintendent said as far as the planning going forward for the 5th grade additions, but what you have in the report is our feeder schools that feed into our middle schools. And so if you could take, for example, the first one in the chart is the Maury and the Bailey. They feed into the daily school. So currently, the Maury school, these are our regular ed numbers right now. These are our regular ed classrooms, not our sub-separate programs. That we do have some sub-separate programs in each of our middle schools, and our special ed students also receive some services at different times during the day in the regular ed setting. So given that, so you look at the Maury has 93 at grade 4 and 96 respectively at the Bailey, which would give a total of 189 currently slated for the daily school, with an average class size of 31.5. So you could go down that whole list and see that at the Wang, now the 27.12 at the Wang takes into account the additional 2 classrooms. The Stocklosa is a 29.16 average class size. The Robinson, 30.6, the Sullivan, 30.8, the Butler, 27.8, Pine Arts at present, 24 average, and the Bartlett, 26.1. Now, the plan is to, with the approval of these additional staff members at the 5th grade level through the budget, as soon as that happens, we will do active recruiting with actually the principal and a road show going out to our grade 4 classrooms, meeting with parents, talking about the STEM Academy and the program offerings, specifically trying to target those middle schools that have those higher numbers. So we spoke with the middle school principals this past week relative to if we could pull some students into the Rogers to fill those 2 classrooms, that it would, we're hoping that it will alleviate those numbers. Because at present, I believe our principals reported that they're probably about, their class size at the 5th grade level now is about 28, 29. So if we could eliminate a few students moving over to the Rogers, that would help us. Also, Mr. Dakota had some students that were on the wait list for the Wang School, and we were able to take those students and move them into the Wang presently because of the additional classes there as well.
Thank you very much. Any questions on 5th grade?
Just to note, Mr. Gignac, in the last week, the Family Resource Center has received 8 phone calls from other middle schools that would like to go to the grade 5 Rogers School. So word is kind of already filtered through the system. So filling the slots, I don't think is going to be a problem this year.
Okay.
Okay?
That was actually
Thank
my
you.
question.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll move on to, oh, sorry, Ms. Doherty.
Well, since we have, do you mind, Mr. Dakota, could you address is transportation going to be an issue where you've got, I know it's, I mean, in terms of, is it going to be a costly issue to get these, because we're going to be taking students from a number of areas of the city, so.
Not with the 5th grade enrollment. We've already looked into that, and we feel that there will be no increase in our regular ed buses for that, as well as our special ed. As it pertains to the budget, that's a different issue. The full budget, I would.
Sorry.
Thank you. Next, we'll talk about the job description for the facility director. Mr. Frisch, if you could be brief, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, so the school committee, this is the facility directors are running back, actually running from school to school, putting out different repairs, fixing repairs, and dealing with the needs of each building. But it's essential to have a facility director for the school district of 25 buildings. This position is replacing Brian Curley's position. It's a different title. Originally, we were going to have 2 facility directors, one K-8 and one for the high school. But given the constraints of the budget in adding back some additional costs for the bridge program, we're now recommending just the one facility director for the entire school district. So this pretty much mirrors what we currently have today.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Great. Next up is the job description for the internal auditor.
Okay, we've done a business reorganization. This is one of the new positions that we're moving people around. The internal audit position is crucial for providing some checks and balances throughout the system, maintaining segregation of duties, and testing different transactions, and making sure the data is clean and the data is consistent and there's no errors between one database and another database. We have two different databases in our payroll system. One, the Munis system the city uses, and then we also use X2 throughout the, for both student and the payroll. And the job descriptions, positions in one database are different than another database, and so it's crucial to have consistency between the two databases and to have data integrity throughout the system.
Sure. Thank you. Can you tell us how this is going to be funded? Is this going to be the local budget or grant funds?
Yeah, when we looked at the internal auditor is grant funded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions regarding the internal auditor position?
I'd just ask which grant.
Which one?
It's an indirect cost, so it's going to be spread over 3 different grants, the SPED, the Title I, and then there's the early childhood grant as well. It's a pretty large grant.
Do we have a percentage, a federally approved indirect rate, or do we just charge it off to the grants as, you know, based on each individual budget?
Currently, we're going to do the same model that we're doing with our grants manager, which is before we were doing 50-50 between the SPED and Title I.
Okay.
Now we're going to hit 3 different grants
Okay.
and spread it out to smaller impact on the grants, each individual grant.
Great, thank you. Moving on, assistant business manager position.
Assistant business manager position is retooled from the, it was on the books originally. The assistant business manager is crucial to provide day-to-day operations of the business office. Currently, I'm, doing both jobs, and I'm here from 8 o'clock to 11 to 12. So it's impossible to be in meetings and also conduct the day-to-day activities. Most organizations this size have, or even much smaller, have a business chief financial officer as well as assistant business manager. This position will focus on the payroll, where we want to create some more systems and create more efficiencies in consistency in how we enter data and how we pull the data out. And so when we need to do retros, like we're in the midst of, that it's easy to do instead of, a very cumbersome process.
Okay, just a few questions about this position. You're proposing to eliminate the payroll supervisor, correct?
Correct.
Okay. My concern, I've held this position in another school district, and I totally agree with the job description. However, I don't necessarily agree with where it stands on the organizational chart. It looks like we're replacing a payroll supervisor that was salaried at around $60,000 with an assistant business manager that would be making $90,000, basically doing the same thing, supervising 3 payroll clerks. So I think I'm not going to make a motion that you do this, but I think you should maybe think of restructuring the organizational chart so this position, if approved by the full body, will be able to be your right-hand person and manage everything in your absence, not just payroll.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. And if you were to look on the city side, they have a payroll supervisor in the auditor's office, which I believe makes a lot less than this. So I think you just have to, it doesn't make much sense to me to have this person solely supervise 3 payroll
Okay.
clerks.
Let me take that under consideration and retool.
Yeah, I think the job description makes sense because it does include a lot of the other responsibilities that you hold. But I think in the organizational chart, it's not clear.
Sure.
Ms.
Thanks
Doherty?
for the feedback on
Sure.
that.
I don't have that level of detail on this job description, but one thing that jumped out at me is you don't say a minimum of years required. For a salary of $90,000, I would think you're looking for somebody with some substantial experience.
Right.
And it's not listed under here.
Good point.
Great. Any further discussion? Moving on, job description for a data analyst. And sorry, just to be clear, that position will be funded with the local budget.
No, that position will be funded through grants.
The assistant business manager.
Oh, they said, right,
Okay.
correct.
And then the data analyst will be through
Grants,
funding. Okay.
yes. So I'm sorry, jumped ahead to data analyst. Well, this position is crucial that in a large organization, you're dealing with a large amounts of data. And to have this data be downloaded, be able to merge databases, two different databases, and sync the information together is crucial in highlighting differences between databases and also syncing the information from one to the other. It takes a high-level person to be able to do this. We have a person on staff that can meet these needs, that would also be a half-time data analyst and also be a half-time instructional support specialist. And so there'd be one position with two different duties.
Okay.
And what you're seeing here is just the business office portion.
Right, because the other job description already exists.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions on Ms. Martin?
So is that the reason for the work year?
Yes,
It's only a 10-month position?
right.
Because the instructional specialist?
It
Okay.
follows the salary and the days of the instructional specialists.
Okay, and then salary would be split between those two line items, those two
Correct.
areas? Okay.
Great. Any further discussion on the data analyst, Ms. Doherty?
Oh, actually, just on a number of these positions, I don't know if you or the superintendent, can you address how this is going to help us to do it better, more efficient, quick? Because we're adding a number of positions in the business office. I'd just like to know the thinking behind that.
Well, it's going to pay for itself. Actually, we're going to save dollars. The current reorganization saves around $70,000. So we are eliminating positions, adding positions, but when it comes to the net result, we're saving money. But to answer your question, how does this do it better for us? We need to be able to have a more automated system than we currently have. The data in the system is not in there that can easily be downloaded and easily be, for instance, look up a step. When does a person change a step? Well, it's not clear in the system. And so for each person, you have to manually go in and determine. And it really needs a lot of work in order to update our data system so the data is consistent. We have some policies, procedures. There needs to be a lot of work to be done in order to have trust in the payroll system, trust in the accounting system. We need, and be able to run reports quicker than we do. So I want to be able to run a report by hitting a button. I'm not able to do that.
Right.
So we need to be able to automate and streamline. And it's taken too much of our time to do this manually. And when you have a computer system, you should be able to reap the benefits of time saving. We're not doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think in an effort to have everybody leave here by 10 o'clock, I think if it's okay with my colleagues to group the rest of the agenda together, and if there are any questions regarding any of those topics, to ask them at this point.
Boy, the night was, we were just on a roll.
Yeah.
We were ready to go another couple hours, but
I think he just gave you the 2-minute warning, quarterback.
the game is, are you saying the game is almost over?
Yeah.
We have some yards to cover, but I'll defer to the school committee.
Well, we'll absolutely address these issues in the next budget hearing if we don't get to them tonight.
Okay.
Ms. Doherty?
Sorry, I don't mean to aggravate you
Yes,
with this.
no,
I
you're
just
on it.
have, it's a quickie, and it's not going to be a long answer. At our April 25th finance meeting, one of the reports we asked for was an account of the city's in-kind district spending, and I didn't see that report. Did I miss it?
We've requested the information. We're not going to, typically that information we receive not till October. So they're in the midst of their budget season. What they do is, at the end of our fiscal year, they tabulate the in-kind cost. And that doesn't get sorted out until, looking back from last year, October.
So is there a way to get the last 2 years then? To
We
see
have-
what they charged us for in-kind spending for the last 2 years, if we can't get the current year?
Yeah.
And we don't know what they'll be doing for the future, to look back at the last 2 that we could get.
We will make that request. We will make that request for the past 2 years, and then knowing that this year will come later.
So does that mean you have been getting reports? You said
no,
you
he's-
typically get them in October?
No, what happened, he's talking about the reports, and I think what you're requesting is the details. There's a
Yeah,
big
the
difference.
breakdown
The
of where
breakdown,
those
yeah.
charges
The
came from.
reports, we always get them, because that's what we report. There is a template
Right,
that we
that
report.
just tells you the dollar amount. No, I'm looking for the breakdown of the money that the city is spending
Okay, we will,
towards their
yeah,
net school spending.
we can ask
Thank
them.
you.
Thank you. And just to conclude, one of the other positions I noticed in your budget was to change the HR director to now include public relations as a piece. Did that job description change?
Well, they're actually doing that by default, because we don't have anybody who does PR, so they are doing that by default. I think we're just going to do we'll just include some of the items in their job description to make it more official.
Okay. And also, I just have a question regarding a piece of the narrative and the budget, and it's either repetitive or misreading it. On the last paragraph of page 10, it says, the superintendent's recommended 2017 budget sustains the existing district programs and services provided in FY16 with the expansion of the Rogers STEM School. A general fund operating budget of $158.4 million to be reduced by transportation costs of $7.8 million is required to accomplish these initiatives. The transportation costs are paid by Lowell Public Schools. However, this is the responsibility of the city. This requires an additional amount of $7.8 million to fund transportation, bringing the budget to $158.4 million. So
It's repetitive.
It's repetitive. Okay, so
Probably
you're not
repetitive.
telling us that you have a $7.8 million shortfall?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
I think it was 2 people authoring the document, and we consolidated it up, and we kept
Yeah,
each other,
okay.
2 people's language.
Great. I entertain a motion to accept the reports as a report of progress by Ms. Doherty, second by Mr. Gendron. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Do we know when we're meeting again on this issue?
Motion to adjourn, second by Mr. Gendron. Our next meeting
11th.
regarding the budget will be held next Monday?
The 11th, right?
Next Monday at
Is it the Monday,
7:15? Yeah,
At the Rogers?
at the Rogers STEM Academy.
What's today?
It's Monday.
Today is what, the 6th or the 4th? The 4th, so
No, I think it's
think
not
that-
the 11th,
it's
9th.
the 9th, okay. And then there is one scheduled for 11 if needed, I guess, right?
Right. It's next Monday.